And here's what I saw most of my career in the corporate world, in the different companies, right? Many people would get bypassed for promotion, not because they were not smart or hardworking. They couldn't connect personally with senior management. They couldn't communicate confidently, and they definitely didn't want to stand out. And so I decided I'm going to design a program that teaches people what I call the obvious to them, because they either didn't know it or didn't know how to do it or didn't want to do it. So if the organization had a group of people that they wanted to, be a little bit more visible to senior management, then they hire me. I'll come in, do the program, and do this.
Welcome to the Secrets of Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Keis. Well, really had an enjoyable interview with today's guest, Stephen Krempl. Now, I found out in the middle of it, Stephen actually has got Hungarian roots, even though he grew up in Singapore. He said, how's that possible? And of course, as a fellow Hungarian, we connected right away. Now, Stephen has written the book, The 5% Zone. I won't give away all the different components there, but it's really about how many people who work hard don't necessarily get promoted or get noticed, and he really goes through the different components on that. Now, Stephen has quite a stellar career where he was vice president of Yum Brands, and so, they have like the Kentucky Fried Chicken or something like that underneath them. In fact, that brand had 1 million employees or franchisees around the world, so that is a pretty big role that he had there. And then he actually was the chief learning officer at Starbucks as well. So we have a lot of interesting twists and conversation pieces as part of it. So please enjoy this show. Now, before we get into that, I just want to encourage you that you're important, that you matter, yet at the same time, the most important person for you to work on is yourself. And so at Synergy, we have all these tools and resources to serve you. We've now really expanded all our online courses and offerings. And so the one that we're really mentioning today is what do you really value? But we have one, why aren't you more like me? Or another course, Dying to Live, or the Quest for Purpose. And on it goes with other courses as well. So my encouragement is that, invest in yourself, or help others on your team to invest in themselves so that they can be clear about who they are, so that they can get noticed and that you can be in this top 5%. So just working hard isn't going to be enough. Working on yourself, working smart, but also being noticed is also very, very important. So thank you as always for listening. If you like what we're doing, please pass it on. Leave a positive comment on whatever platform you're listening on. So thank you for listening to Secrets of Success. Here's our guest, Stephen Krempl. Welcome to the Secrets of Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Keis. When we think about the ultimate performance, how can we get to the top 5%? Well, today's expert is going to help us with that with his brand new book, The 5% Zone, pardon me. And he comes not that far from me. He's just south of our area in Washington State. And Stephen Krempl, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're welcome. Now, Stephen, as most of the Secrets of Success listeners know, we always get into people's story before we get into their expertise.
Sure.
And so we were just talking off air that before you moved to the U.S. and to Washington State, you were actually a Singaporean.
That's right.
For those people who are not aware, somebody from Singapore. So you were born there. So just give us the story there about sort of your heritage and growing up in that space.
Well, the first thing is I can say, Ken, is there are not too many Krempls in Singapore. That name is not a typical Singaporean name. As we know, most Singaporeans are Chinese, and then you have a big population of Malays and Indians, and then others. So for most of my life, I grew up on my identity card, which we have in Singapore. I was an other. It was kind of strange. My father was Hungarian, my mother was Malaysian, and then they ended up in Singapore. around World War II when it broke out. So.
Well, and just so you know, Keis is actually Keis, and all four of my grandparents came from Hungary to Canada in the First and Second World
That's
War.
an interesting connection right here. We found out right now, though.
Yeah, we could be related, Stephen. We don't even know it. So
exactly.
cool. So, what did your dad do? What was it that he was doing in Singapore?
Well, as you know, he was actually part of the Budapest Academy of Music. So he was a classical musician. And way before, I guess it was a couple of years before World War II broke out, he left Hungary, kind of headed east with his merry band of musicians. He was primarily a cellist, but I think they had 7 or 8 of them. They went to Cairo. I think they went to Bombay, went to Sri Lanka, and then by the time they hit Singapore, the war broke out, and they remained, though. So that's kind of how he ended up in Singapore. But he was a classical musician.
Well, when you think about that, what are the odds of that I'm actually on the road doing concerts, and then I just stay there? Now, pardon my recall, your mother was from where?
She was She was born and raised in Malaysia her first few years, and then she ended up in Singapore. Singapore and Malaysia used to be one country before Singapore broke off in 1965. So, so essentially they were from the same place. But
yeah, most people don't know the story, Stephen, that Singapore actually was annexed from Malaysia and actually asked to leave.
Yeah,
we learned that when we were there a few years ago doing work. And we did some work in Kuala Lumpur as well.
Yes.
And now they're probably regretting it and said, well, what did we do there? So that's a unique situation. So what was life growing up like as an other?
Well, actually, it was pretty interesting because, most of my friends were Chinese or Indians or Malays or, most of the majority of the population, right? There were, I think in my school, I can think of 1 or 2 other people. We were called Eurasians because there's a mix of European and Asian. And so, yeah, it was quite interesting because, at the time, we talk about diversity nowadays and all that. Mm-hmm. I never felt any different from my Chinese friends or any of the other races at all. We were all friends, though, right, in school. So, but that was in Singapore. It's a very, as you well know, you go there. It's a very well-structured country with many rules that people tend to follow. So from the outside, if you are from a country that has maybe not so many rules, it looks kind of strict. But when you were living in it, you really didn't pay attention because you're just part of normal or so.
So then, did your dad continue to be a musician? That was his thing that he continued when he was in Singapore?
That's right. He continued to be a musician. He played. In fact, one of the things that kept him alive in World War II was because he was a classical musician, the Japanese officers would make them play every Friday, I believe, in the Victoria Memorial Hall, and that's what kept him alive, so to speak, at that time. He would tell, I know my mom would tell stories of where very senior officers would knock in the middle of the night and just tell him play, and they'll sit there, close their eyes, and he'll play his cello for an hour, and then they leave, and the next day they send food over. So interesting story.
Well, nice to have some skills that were appreciated
exactly
at that time. So after, we call it high school here, what did you do in
as you know, and most Singaporeans have to serve national service, so I spent 2.5 years in the military right after high school. And then I came out and I worked for my brother, who was already, he's 15 years my senior, so he was a general manager of a company. I worked there for about 2 years to earn enough money so that I could pay for college, or university, as we say, most of the time, right?
So your folks weren't going to pay for you like some people are expecting here in North America.
Yeah, no, they didn't have, they weren't going to pay for me, and I decided I wanted to go to the U.S. to go study, so I kind of conjured up my own first year's, fees and stuff, and then went off. So it was a adventure from a very young age.
So now, did you leave and go to the U.S. for university, or did you stay in Singapore to do school?
No, I did leave and go to the U.S. for to do university. So I actually ended up in a university in Hawaii called BYU Hawaii. So everybody knows BYU in Provo. In those days, we won't date ourselves here, but those days in the 80s, anybody going to the Provo campus had to do a acclimatization kind of one semester in BYU Hawaii. Though. But after landing Hawaii, I'm going, why do I want to go to Provo? This place is pretty damn good, though. You got sun and beach, and everything is fine. So I actually stayed there for the rest of the 3 years that I...
You really didn't go to the U.S. for school.
No.
You went to Hawaii.
I went to Hawaii, though. Technically, we can call it the U.S., but it wasn't really, right?
Yeah, okay, no, I get that. I'm thinking mainland, you were there. But
almost went there.
Yeah, you got halfway there, so that's pretty cool as part of it. What did you take in university?
I actually did a double degree in human resource development and accounting. The weirdest combination you can ever find, Ken.
Well, there we go. So, hey, there are some people in human resources that have to do the numbers for personnel. What was driving that direction for you? What was causing your interest in that?
I actually, because part of my first 2 years, I had a opportunity to train some of our distributors in the product that was, that the company was selling, and I became, nobody wanted to do it, and I was the ham, so to speak, to go up and talk and teach the people about a product, and I found this whole human resource development area really interesting. And when I hit the university, they actually had a program in human resource development. And one of the professors from Provo came over, and he said, don't go to Provo. I'm here, though. If you go to Provo, you'll be talking to my aides, not me. So it was a smaller university, but that created a very intimate situation where you could meet the professors all the time and talk about stuff. In fact, I went on a couple of consulting gigs for him whilst I was at the university.
Cool. So you finished school in Hawaii, then what?
Went back to Singapore, though. And that's where I started my journey in the corporate world, joining Motorola, and then Pepsi, and then by that time we spun off and became Yum Brands, and I was sent on a 3-year rotational assignment to Dallas, and in 1998, and I've been here ever since.
So you never went back. Now, when you said 3-year rotation, with what company was that with?
It was with Yum Brands. So Yum Brands is the franchisor for KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell.
Oh, there we go. Okay, well, you're helping my ignorance there, so that's perfect, Stephen. So you were going to Dallas. Why were they sending you there? Is it just that they appreciated to send their officers around the world, or?
Well, so here's part of the journey where this whole 5% opportunity, came up, and we'll talk about that later. But imagine this, Ken. I was in a conference, right, with 100 of my colleagues around the world. And my boss's boss is presenting a new program that they're going to roll out in the company. Now, I'm looking and listening to this, and I know it's not going to quite work the way he's talking about it in Asia. So I decided to detach from the meeting. I was scribbling on my piece of paper, which I still have in the office right here. And then when I got the answer, boom, my hand went up, right? So you can imagine, right? Your boss's boss is speaking, and this clown is putting his hands up. So, the guy goes, yes, Krempl. They used to call me by my surname. Yes, Krempl. Dave, and here's what I said. Dave, I have something that will make your program even better. And then I said, do you mind if I come up and show you, though? Now, this is a big risk, right, Ken? You got 99 other people looking at you, telling your boss's boss that his program needs to be improved, though. So I went up there on the flip chart. I kind of sketched it out. And then he turns to everybody and says, yeah, do you think this will be, do you think this will be better, though? And everybody kind of nodded, and I went, whoosh, right? I went back, sat down. At the end of the conference, he came to me and says, hey, would you mind presenting this to my peers in Japan, I guess it was the next month or something. And fast forward the story, in 4 months' time, they decided that I would lead the international training function in Dallas in the corporate headquarters for the international division. And the rest is history, though. So the one little swoop move I did in a meeting got me noticed.
So you could have got fired, but instead
I should have got fired. That's right. But
now, to the credit of your boss's boss, he didn't take this personally. He wasn't offended by that, and he was open enough and curious enough to listen to you.
Well, yeah, and part of the trick, Ken, is, which I was going to reveal later, is I phrase the phrases or words I use positively. See, I could have put up my hand and said, Dave, I don't think that stuff will work here in Asia, right? You sound like a whining guy who says it doesn't going to work. But I didn't say that. I said, Dave, I have something that will make your program even better. Now, that's a total flip. And one of the things we talk about, because I was lucky, in fact, in my first role in Motorola, to learn this. And that's a whole other story that I may get into if you want me to tell you. But if you phrase it that way, most leaders are a little bit more receptive to listen, even though your idea is negative. Most people shoot themselves in the foot because they sound whiny and complaining, as opposed to rephrasing the words to something a little bit more neutral or positive, as we call it in the book.
Well, I mean, it is important because if you phrase it negative, then the likelihood that somebody's going to be defensive is
all the time, right?
Isn't it?
It's all the time. It was funny. So, you mind, Ken? Can I just tell you that Motorola store where I actually learned this thing?
Absolutely. I think you can. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So imagine this. I just joined the company, and the human resource director, let's call him Jason, and he says, hey, Krempl, I'm going on a 2-week road trip. I want you to analyze all our processes and tell me, what you think about them. I'm going, this is my opportunity, though, right? In the military, I was good at finding problems and pointing them out. So this is my chance. So I was rubbing my hands together and just chomping on the chance to do this, right? So 2 weeks later, he comes back and he goes, hey, Krempl, did you find anything else? I was waiting for this opportunity. I jumped in a meeting and said, Jason, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is missing, and this is, totally, not according to our specification, short of saying, I don't know which idiot was here in this last position, but that person obviously didn't do anything, though. He kept quiet for 2 seconds, and then he said, I was in that position. I was the last person in that position. I just put my foot in my mouth, though, right? Mm-hmm. And then he said this, though. So it was a coaching moment for him, and he said, Krempl, just realize this, though. In any meeting you go in Motorola, if there's a problem, the person that's running the meeting either probably caused the problem or is in charge of that problem. Do not say negative. So this is what you should have told me, though. You said, Jason, there's so many opportunities to improve the processes in this department. If we did a tweak on this one, a change here, added this, the department will be so much better. And I would have said, yes, Krempl, carry on, though, right? And from that day, I go, shoots, right? This guy has made a big point, and instead of trying to be smart and pointing out mistakes, you still point out the mistakes, but you articulate them in a very different way back to senior management, though.
So you phrase them more as opportunities versus issues.
That's right.
You're moving towards something versus away from something. So
away from something, or accentuating what is wrong, right? And this is the biggest deal. It's funny because, when we used to run classes, live classes, back in the day, last year, and this comes up as the biggest point because either people get it or they don't get it, or they may be not exposed to it. And here's the thing that most people say. Well, Stephen, I'm a straight shooter. I'm going to shoot, I'm going to shoot from the hip and tell it like it is because this is the way it is, and my job is to point the mistakes out. And I go, yeah, I know that, but most senior guys don't want to say it, don't want to hear it that way, even though they may say, I want you to be frank and tell me like it is, though. Okay? And if you step into that landmine, on that landmine, then you might blow up, though. Right? So they're saying that they want you to be frank, but they also want you to say it as if you are going to solve the problem. Don't sound negative as if you are complaining, right? Well, we all have a lot of problems. Well, they know that as well. Everybody knows that. That's why you were hired in the organization. And that's a big deal that we make. So,
no, it makes sense. And all of us have made that error of being direct and said, well, that really sucks, or, who's idiot?
Yeah, right.
It's just being disciplined with our language and our words. So, Stephen, you get transferred. You're in Dallas.
Yep.
Then what happened?
Then they sent me from the international division to Louisville, Kentucky, or Louisville, as you pronounce it, to corporate headquarters for Yum Brand. So I went from the international division to corporate headquarters.
And what were you doing there? What was your responsibilities?
So the responsibility there was actually to build what they call Yum University, though. So we took care of the top 3,000 people in the company, both franchise and company owned. And so we ran, designed, developed, and delivered all the programs that help franchisees and or corporate people to build their businesses around the world. At that time, we had, I think the company, when I was there, had just under 1 million people that were part of the whole system. So,
well, that's a large, I don't want to call it workforce, but
yeah, it is, right? You can imagine, right? So,
wow. Okay, and then after that, what happened?
After that, then I was recruited to go to Starbucks, and that's why I'm in Seattle. And it was an opportunity that came forth, and I decided to do that. And I decided, even though I left Starbucks several years ago, I decided to stay in the Northwest. It's either you like it or you don't like it in the Northwest, and the family here likes it. So.
Okay, even though it does rain a little bit more than
it does rain.
Dallas, though most people don't know that Dallas has all these thunderstorms in the summer.
Yeah, it does. Well, you got all kinds of different problems, right? Whether it's in Louisville or in Dallas, you got tornadoes. You got all kinds of other problems. We get a little bit of rain, right, Ken?
Yes, exactly. Not quite as much. So you get recruited to go to Starbucks. What was that experience like, and what were some sort of insights that you can share with the audience from there?
Well, one of the things I can think you can tell, firstly, Starbucks is a very strong brand and had very big impact in many of the communities they used to go to or open up their stores. And I think the most interesting thing that we did at the time was we spent 2 weeks. So even before I hit headquarters, I was still in Louisville. I had to do 2 weeks work as a barista. So to really get to know how it felt, making the different beverages and serving it to the customers. And it was the most enlightening and the hardest work I've ever had to do, is to, not because I'm standing up, but just to think about the myriad of different drinks and how much the customers knew their drink, though. And I had, people who come in and go, I'd like my coffee at 140 degrees, please. And I was thinking, really? Do you really know what 140 degrees is? And we would have thermometers to measure how hot it was. And I remember one time I served the customer and said, this is not 140 degrees. I'm going, oh my goodness. These people really know their stuff. And this is just the temperature, not even talking about the different options of milk and, all kinds of other stuff different flavors they want to put into their coffee, right?
So when you say hardest, was it just because of the sort of expectations and all the moving pieces that are live and happening in the retail environment, or what was making it
Well, it's hardest because, so here's one of the insights that maybe people didn't realize about Starbucks and why we get our customers coming back all the time. Starbucks allows you to customize your drink, though. You don't get it's not the regular, so you can customize anything, right? From the milk to the pumps to the number of shots to the whatever, though. That gives you the combination, and because the drink flavor profile becomes unique to you and to Starbucks, you go other places and the drink doesn't taste the same, so you kept going back to Starbucks. But now think of it from a barista standpoint, and I'm new, right? And it's not like the same drink called the same thing, the caramel macchiato. Well, the caramel macchiato is probably the same. If they want extra this or extra that, I got to think of all the different things I have to put inside, right, the drink. And now it went from 8 drinks to 8 times 8. You have 64 combinations, probably times another set of combinations, and you literally have to pay attention to what people are asking for, because at the end when you serve it to them, they know whether you got it right or wrong. Mm. The other point is that, at Starbucks, they don't kind of give a spiel on, good morning, welcome to Starbucks, may I have your drink, please, right? They encourage you to be, at least at the time I was, and I think it's still true, encourage you to say what you felt to the customer in front of you, though. So if you know the person, if you've seen them in before, you can say hi, right? So there's no script per se. And so everything is, and you learn from your buddy, right? So you have a training buddy, that person teaches you, you model them, and it kind of works, though. It really works well. But, I take my hats off to the baristas because, they really serve their customers well, and they really know their drinks, though. So I just a slow learner, probably.
Well, not everybody is suited for certain jobs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you knew that. The other one around this is, it's an interesting, as a listener of what you were saying there, they were allowing individuals to be people, not to be robots. Mm. And
exactly.
That's what made it more personable, rather than this rote thing where, how many times you get on a phone and then, you just had a nice conversation with this customer service person, and then they go into the script as they say goodbye and said, well, what was that?
And you can tell it's a script, so these people don't even know how to pretend it's not a script, right? They're literally reading it off, and you can tell, right? So it's kind of funny, but one of the things we say in the book is small things are big things, and this is one of the small things that is a really big thing if you don't know that it exists. And many people may not notice it, right? So and those are the things that, as a business or as an individual in a corporation, if you figure out what that small thing is that is a big thing, then that's great, because that's what people are going to know you for or notice you for as you climb up your career or whatever. Mm.
Now, I just want to back up, and you don't have to answer it, Stephen, because it's probably personal, is how did you come to get invited to Starbucks? So how did they even know that you existed out there? And you get this invite to be, it was the chief learning officer at Starbucks, right?
Yeah, so somebody up the hierarchy was from Yum Brands before, and they ended up there, and they knew me, and they wanted me to set up what I did at Yum Brands at Starbucks.
Well, in terms of the university style and the
whole
system.
The whole education system, yeah.
Cool. Well, that's actually a pretty big feather in your cap to be CLO of Starbucks.
Yep. It was an interesting time, definitely. So,
anything else from your time at Starbucks that would be beneficial for the audience to kind of get an insight?
No, I think, you really have to love coffee, right? Now, now I'm saying love coffee, but whichever company you are in, you have to love and know your product. And one of the things we had coffee tasting. So our weekly meetings all started with coffee tasting. Now think about it, okay? Here's a meeting, and let's say you're part of my team, right? And so before the Monday meeting, I'll go to you and say, hey, Ken, you're going to lead coffee tasting on Monday. And you go, okay, that's fine. So you will come, and so think about it. The first 5-10 minutes is you bringing you're brewing your favorite coffee, your blend, right? We have a French press at the end of the room. You put them, and everybody's in. You put it, you press it, and then everybody has either their cups or they brought their little shot glasses, so to speak, right? You pour out the coffee, and then you lead us in coffee tasting, right? So the first thing you do is you cup the coffee, then you smell it, and then you go, can you smell the hints of chocolate and earthiness and the berries? And everybody go, yes, yes, yes. Well, I'll tell you what, the first time I was there, I couldn't smell nothing, though. This is coffee, though, right? But it's a little bit like wine tasting, though. After a while, you start to realize that you have all these aromas in the coffee. And then you go on to, okay, let's take a sip. And then you swirl it around your mouth, and the people will go, can you feel the heaviness on the back of your tongue? And I'm going, I didn't know I had a back of my tongue, though, right? Can you feel the tingling at the side of your tongue? I'm going, holy moly, man. But guess what? After a while, you really feel all these different things, and you get to know it. So why am I saying this is, if you work at Starbucks, one of the things that would really, really be useful is you love coffee. And we had something called a green apron and a black apron. So if you were a green apron as a barista, you kind of, you probably love coffee, you work there, but the black aprons are the people who actually studied coffee. We have tests online, and most people want to aspire to be a black apron. So,
cool. So, Stephen, what caused you to leave Starbucks, and then what did you do after that? Did you move into your own independent company that you're doing now? So just that journey and how that happened.
Yeah, so I had a situation where my mother was not doing very well health-wise, and I decided that, the current job didn't really allow me to get out to Singapore. She was back in Singapore, right? So I decided to leave, start my own consulting company, so I had a little bit control more of my time, and I traveled out to Asia a fair bit, half a dozen times a year minimum. Right, and it allowed me to to get to see her more often, and I would say I got to see her at least 3 more years before she passed on. So.
And so then, what's your business that you moved into? What is it, your expertise, so the audience gets a sense of what is it? How do you serve clients, people today?
If it was a one-liner, we would say, I will help you become 100% more visible to senior management, right? So that's the one line, the one-liner that we say. However, here was the problem, Ken. So as I set out to develop this consulting training business, so I said, so what is the problem that I'm trying to solve, or what would the problem I would like to solve? And here's what I saw most of my career in the corporate world, in the different companies, right? Many people would get bypassed for promotion, not because they were not smart or hardworking. They couldn't connect personally with senior management. They couldn't communicate confidently, and they definitely didn't want to stand out. And so I decided I'm going to design a program that teaches people what I call the obvious to them, because they either didn't know it, or didn't know how to do it, or didn't want to do it. So if the organization had a group of people that they wanted to, be a little bit more visible to senior management, then they hire me. I'll come in, do the program, and do this. So I usually start the program with 3 questions. So Ken, I'm going to ask you the 3 questions, and it's a yes or no answer, right? Very, very simple, right? So here's the first one. Does the hardest working person always get noticed or promoted? Yes or no?
Not necessarily, no.
That's right. Very good. You're getting it again. So second question, does the smartest person always get noticed or promoted?
Well, I'm going to go with you, not necessarily.
Not necessarily. And then here's the third one, though. Does the most loyal person always get noticed or promoted, though?
Oh, for sure not.
For sure not. And then, so the next question I ask the people in the class, whether it's virtual or not, is then what gets a person noticed or promoted in your organization? And then all hell breaks loose because they suddenly realize it's not just being smart or hardworking or being loyal. It is other things. And then they start to identify other things. And one of the biggest components that come up is how do they show up in these 5 situations in front of senior management. So in the end, we tell them, look, there are only 5 situations that your senior management sees or hears you, right? So here they go. The one-on-one meeting, the team meeting is either the small functional team meeting or the large all-hands meeting or town hall that you have. The third one is the conference call. The fourth one is the business presentation. And the fifth one is the company social. Nobody knows if you came in, when I'm talking about senior management, whether you came in at 7:30 in the morning or you left at 9:30 p.m. that night. When your name comes up, people go back to their memory of you in one of those 5 situations that they met you in, or you said something. And this is what suddenly people don't realize, that they miss their opportunities to stand out, be more visible, or be noticed by senior management in those 5 situations. So I had a gentleman who was on a call, and I asked him, I said, Ben, do you participate in global conference calls? He says, yes. I says, how often? He says, every 2 weeks. I said, great. How many people on the call? 30 people on the call. I go, wow, that's a big call. So let me ask you a question, Ben. In the last 5 calls, how many comments or questions did you make, though? And then I told him, don't answer, I'll answer it for you. I said, 0, though. Then he says, how do you know? I said, by the way you interact in this class, I know you won't say anything. So my question to him then was, who knows you exist? You're on the call, there are 30 other people. However, you've not said anything. Now, don't get me wrong, Ken, right? It's not about just speaking up, but if in the last 5 calls you said nothing, then I don't even know you exist. So, and people have to figure this one out and realize, what is talking too much or not participating at all. And that's a big deal for many of them, because they'll use this excuse, and I'll say as an excuse, they'll say, my work will speak for itself. And then they beat themselves on the chest and they go, right? It doesn't. In the large corporate world, it has to be more than just your work, because everybody else is doing good work as well. So.
Well, it goes back to this whole concept of influence. You mentioned something just now, Stephen, which was pertinent, is sometimes people can, torpedo their career by talking too much and inappropriately and interrupting.
That's the other problem. Yeah, exactly. So there are 2 problems. I always tell people there are 2 problems. Say if I have a right hand, my right hand would be people who talk too much, and on the left hand is people who don't say anything, though. Both ends of the spectrum are a problem, though, because, the guys who talks too much, the moment they interrupt or put their hand out, everybody's rolling their eyes going, oh, my God, here he goes again, right? But nobody tells that person that, though, right? I'm sure you've run across some of those people before, but...
Never happened, Stephen. I could have been one of them, actually. So, Stephen, you wrote this book, The 5% Zone.
Yes.
What was your intent with this book, as far as what's the audience and what are they going to get out of this book? What's its purpose?
Well, the purpose is very simple. It's just visibility strategies to help you to get noticed and rewarded in your organization. It's really targeted at people who are, I would say, middle and higher. In fact, I would like to say anybody, but that's a bad target audience. So if you're middle management and you're moving up, right, and you want to get noticed, or you want to be able to articulate your points of view clearly and get noticed by senior management, then this is a book for you, because it gives you a whole range of tools, techniques, and philosophies that you need to have before you even want to do it. Because if you don't have many of the philosophies, then you'll say, well, this Ken guy, he's just sucking up. He's brown-nosing. He's whatever it is, right? And Ken may not have that frame of reference, though, right? And that's how sometimes what we call the rules of the game is very different for different people, and they have to learn those rules of the game. At least I lay a perspective for you to follow, right? Let's put it that way.
So what are you meaning by the 5% zone? Is the 5% is the 5% that gets noticed?
So the 5% is we define is being in the presence of people at least 2 levels above you in the organization, in those 5 situations, right? So we say your 95% is your team meeting, maybe even your meeting with your supervisor that you do all the time, or maybe your subordinates. So that kind of stuff is your normal 95%. But when you are meeting with people 2 levels above and higher, you need to switch the way that you communicate and the way that you deal with those people. And the first time when you hear that, people their guards will come up and say, "Well, Stephen, that's not being very authentic, though." And that's the hardest thing to come across. So here's the way that I try to explain this to people up front, and then they finally realize, though. So here's the question I say, I'll pick somebody out, and I'll say, in the office, you act one particular way, right? And they'll go, yes. I said, now, if you went drinking with your college or university buddies, do you act the same way? And most people will go, no, I'm totally different then. I said, great. And then I asked them, well, if you were married or stuff and you went to your mother-in-law's house, would you act the same way in your mother-in-law's house as you would going out with your buddies drinking, from college or university? And they'll probably go, no, I'm different, right? And if you went to the game, I don't care whether it's ice hockey or football or whatever, do you act the same way as your mother-in-law's house? No. And if you were a person of worship and you went to that place, would you act the same as you were in your game? No. And people go, no. And that's right. Because you acted depending on your role. First role was a leader, manager, or somebody working in an organization. Second role was a friend. Third role was a son-in-law or daughter-in-law. Fourth role, you were a fan. And fifth role, you were a follower of some worship. We change our behavior based on our role. So the key question for you or for them is, what is your senior management expecting of you from your behavior at your next level? And some people are dumbfounded. They don't even know, though. And if you don't even know, then how do I know that you're ready? Because as senior management, people always talk about staff or people, right? They'll go, hey, do you know Stephanie Lee? Yeah, Stephanie, that person, she's a solid worker. She just seems a little hesitant or, hedges her answers. Or, if that's one response, right? If I had another response and said, hey, what do you think of Stephanie Lee? We love Stephanie. She always adds value. She's clear, succinct. I think she'll go far. Or the response could be, what do you think of Stephanie Lee? Stephanie who? If they don't even remember your name, you're toast, right, in an organization.
So what drove you, Stephen, to get into this space to help other people to get sort of noticed? I mean, you could have done a lot of things as a chief learning officer and, in HR.
Yep.
Do you do some of that other work as well?
I think when I started out, I've done so many things, whether it's leadership or team building or whatever it is. However, for me, if you can learn all the models in the world and do things, in the end, it comes down to this, though. Can I connect personally at all levels in the organization? Do I know how to articulate my points of view clearly? Can I come across and communicate confidently? Do I know how to build trust? Can I provide direct feedback, which is how do you say things negatively, positively? We talked about it, right? Do I know how to take ownership, and can I coach and recognize? And those are the 7 tenets in the model we put in the book. And please learn everything else, but in the end, a great deal of your promotability, or whether the senior management sees you as ready for promotability, is many of these aspects in those 5 situations, though. And many people don't get it. In fact, I've had programs where people go, Oh, Steven, I wish I had this information 10 years ago because, I think I've either missed opportunities or shot myself in the foot many times in those meetings. And it's just one of those things. So.
Stephen, at the peril of promoting you in a different direction,
Sure.
These same principles would apply in any context, meaning, let's say I'm in a volunteer organization and I'd like to run for the board.
Exactly.
But I've been to the AGM and I never say anything.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden you do get somebody to nominate you, and then you don't get voted in because nobody knows you, you never say anything, you never add value. So I would argue on your behalf that your principles would apply in any space that I want to have influence.
That's right. Any place that you want to get influence, you want to get noticed, and you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot, unnecessarily with this. So, and it's, you're right though, and some people get it and some people don't. So for me, this is very simple. I'm trying to get as many people to know that here are the rules of the game. It's either you want to play in the game or you don't want to play in the game, though, right? I mean, I tell people, right, look, we all know American football has an oval ball. So does rugby, though, right? And so there's a game called Aussie Rules played only in Australia. They all have the same ball. They all have 2 posts on the field. They all have a referee. But what happens when the referee blows the whistle? The rules are totally different in all 3 of those games, even though many aspects of the game look the same. So you have to figure out the rules of the game, and you cannot, if Ken, you were playing American football and I was playing rugby, and the referee blew the whistle and you tackled me, and I'm going, hey, I don't have the ball, why are you tackling me? That's irrelevant. That's my rules, but it's not the rules of the game being played. And that's where people don't get it sometimes.
Well, that's very good. Now, we only have a few minutes left, if you can
Sure.
believe it already, Stephen. So how can people find out about you and or get your book?
Well, so here's a great deal. So the website that they can go to is Winning in the Work World. So one word, right? winningintheworkworld.com. And if they go there, any of your listeners they're right on the landing page. They just put their name and email, and they can get a free ebook copy of the 5% Zone.
And what's your motivation behind giving away the free book? Let's disclose it here.
Yeah, sure. They can get that. They've got all the information in that. That's fine. If they want more information, they can do our online programs, or even get me to speak at their, in their organizations or their associations or whatever it is. So I'm more than glad to share information and stories about this 5% Zone situation here.
Okay, so say that site again.
winningintheworkworld.com.
winningintheworkworld.com. And then you also have KrempelCommunications.com, do you not?
Yeah, I do. It leads to each other. I think Winning in the Work World is maybe more memorable for people as opposed to trying to figure out the spelling of Krempl and communications, S, no S, that kind of stuff. So.
Okay, well, that's great. So, Stephen, as a sort of a wrap-up for our show, and thanks again for, spending the time to be with us, what are some sort of final words of wisdom and encouragement to our audience members if they want to go a little bit further in life and think about some of the expertise that you have accumulated over the years?
Yeah, it's very simple, Ken. We have a phrase that I use in the book very early on in the book, and it's this: if you are not visible, you are invisible. Let me repeat that one more time. If you are not visible, you are invisible. And what we hope to do is just let people who want to be visible, some of the time, 5% of the time, right, give you the techniques and tools so that you can do that, so that you will have a much more successful career in whatever field you want to do in life. Also.
Well, Stephen, thanks for hanging out with us today.
It's been a pleasure, Ken.
Well, stay on the line with us, Stephen. So, Secrets of Success listeners, you've been listening to Stephen Krempl and his book, The 5% Zone. And as he said, winningintheworkworld.com. Go there, get a free e-copy of that book. And when we think about influence on life, man, this applies to everything. I'm excited about the content that Stephen has shared, and especially when we're in the first part of the show, just really talking about how you phrase your responses. You know, calling somebody an idiot is not going to really get them to have a positive response. But if you say, listen, if there's some ways that we can improve this strategy or this program, you might get a better response. And you know what? We all need a reminder of this. Now, as always, we thank you for spending your most valuable commodity on the show, and that is your time. If you like what we're doing, please pass it on, share it, leave a positive comment on whatever platform you're listening on. You've been listening to The Secrets of Success. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Keis.
Thanks for exploring the secrets of success with us. If you want to keep the momentum going, log on to crgleader.com. Scroll to the bottom and sign up for our inspirational emails. You can also take your success to the next level by following us on Facebook and Twitter and connecting with Ken on LinkedIn. We hope you have a great week and look forward to you joining us next time for the Secrets of Success podcast with Dr. Ken Keis.